Engage.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sex, Lies, and Consciousness with your luscious hostess, May Vu, broadcasting live every Monday at 12 noon Pacific Time.
Hi, everyone. My guest. Today is sex and the soulmate. Detour ahead. Why detour, right? Well, last week, let me just give you a little context on this one. Last week, I went to see the movie Act Like a Woman and Think Like a Man, based on the book by Steve Harvey. It's a great movie, funny, poignant, and I can see it being so helpful to so many people. I mean, like when I was in the dating phase, I could have really used that. And so he had a lot of insight on how men work and how women need to be with men so that we can understand them and work it so that we can get them to commit to us. Yet somehow when I was left with just feeling disturbed or I want more, as much as I think Steve had a lot of good pointers about dating and how to capture a man, it left me asking so many questions like, yeah, but once I got him to commit or even to marry me, now what? Am I going to use sex and delay gratification for the rest of my life to get him to do everything I want? Or isn't that how relationship becomes so dissatisfying, because the woman always have to control and manipulate the guy and motivate him to do things that we want him to do, and then they get to come along begrudgingly, all the way to having kids or putting up the bassinets and cleaning the house, taking out the trash, all these things, like you can have some sex, if you get all these things done. I mean, that's just crazy making to me. So I had so many but questions and statements. So I had to invite my friend Sherry Beck onto this conversation. Sherry and I are both women in our 40-something. Well, let's just leave it there. And we are the been there, done that kind of girls, We got the T-shirt. And what that meant is that we went to our dating scene. We got our husbands, and I know I could speak for myself. My husband was like my soulmate. A really good one. I had a child with him and a house and the dream of living happily ever after and growing old with each other. And yet to both Sherry and me, to our surprise, the dream went dead. It's like it fizzled along the way, and we ended up on lots of detours and lots of unknown, uncharted territories that no one talked about to us. Steve Harvey was not there for us then, So, yeah, he's not. So that's what this conversation today is dedicated to, is to fill in some of those blanks where Steve left off, and perhaps we might even work our way backward to say that his suggestion may be really good and entertaining and make for a good, fun movie, but it set us up into relationship in the long run that we might not want. So, Sherry, come on in, honey. Jump in here with me.
Hi, Mayvu. That's a great place for me to come in to set you up for the relationship that you might not want.
Oh, dear. There's some weird echoing going on with Google Plus and Skype and all that, but we're just going to bless it and, please get the energy clear here, technology. So, Sherry, before we dive in, tell them a little bit about yourself, since you're new to the audience, just some stats,
Some stats. Well, I am a mom. I've done coaching. I've done leadership. I've been successful in the corporate world. I've made a lot of money, and like kind of where you said, a lot of that I did while I was in the supposedly relationship of my dreams, which was the marriage, and at the end of which I just found myself on a verge of a major depression. And so that had me turn my life upside down, basically. So set me on a whole new course, where I have really gotten involved in human dynamics, how humans grow and change, and that what happens is that we're under the illusion that once we reach our 20s or something, we're all grown up. And what I have been immersed in for the last 10 years is understanding that we're just beginning our growing up. Just beginning. And here I am at 40-something.
Wait, I think that was an echo in the Google soundtrack there.
And I really sort of feel like, I think for the first time, because I've really committed myself to this path, I really feel like I'm starting to come out of my adolescence. I really do. So.
Wow, come out of your adolescence. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. That is such a powerful statement. I just have to grab that because I think I know what you meant, and I don't want the audience to miss that. It's like, I truly believe that I'm just going to generalize for the human race because that's just what I do.
Right.
Is that we enter relationship as adolescents, bringing the adolescents' dreams into a relationship, and we don't really, really know what the adult relationship really look like.
I would agree with that, and we don't have any guidebooks for it because there aren't very many role models out there. So
well, Disney stopped. Right,
Mm-hmm.
Disney stopped making the movie after they marry the prince happily ever after, and Steve Harvey stopped after you got the guy. He finally proposed. It's
Absolutely. Done. It's like that marriage, the dream world.
That's right. And somehow it's either they live happily ever after, or they have a terrible divorce, and there's lots and lots of pain, and then hell breaks loose, and there's lots of shame that they carry forward, and then what happened? There's a lot of gap in here.
So that's what we've called this talk about soulmates, because I really do believe that this is part of the response to that is people have seen, oh my God, there isn't a dream out there. Oh my God, look at all of the divorce. Oh, how do you do relationships? Well, if I find my soulmate instead of just the guy that I think I want,
or the guy that I fucked that had really good sex,
or the guy that wants me, then if I find my soulmate, then I can make it work. We can make it work because we're soulmates now, right?
Yeah.
Together.
Well, hang on a second. I have a lot of girlfriends who are in their 40s, still looking for their soulmate, actually. Still believe in that concept of that one, the one. And it scares me to death to hear them because I lived that dream and I broke it, and then I'm realizing that there are lots of the ones out there. It was just me that was being limited in my adolescence dream.
Right. Well, I would agree with that. I would say I got married and then I found my soulmate. And it wasn't the same person.
Oh, shit, you're in trouble then. That's right. That's a terrible tragedy, by the way.
Believe me, it did. It turned my life upside down.
Yeah.
And not only that, I was married and he was married at the same time. And so we had to deal with all of that. And that was 15 years ago. And I can tell you that I found my soulmate and that I've been through, and I'm on what I term my fifth one now.
Wait. Hold on a second.
Now, I've differentiated them, and I think we need to...
Hold on a second. Google Plus kind of skip on you, so we couldn't hear. So repeat that. You met your first soulmate, and then what happened? Something about up to 5.
My life upside down.
And then?
Yeah, it turned my life upside down, and I will tell you that I'm now on my fifth one. Okay, so I met my first soulmate when I was married.
Yeah.
I'm now on my fifth one. And I've been able to go back and see now from this place that the first guy that I married was also a soulmate.
Absolutely.
And still is.
Yeah.
I just didn't know to call it that at the time.
Yeah.
Didn't have the language. And even the word soul, I mean, I think we're in like, what does that word mean to people? So when I say I had 5 of them, I'm actually not even sure if there is, like, what is it we think the soulmate, the one, if there is the one. I'm not sure I've actually met that one yet. Now that I look at it and I'm looking at language. So I have to, even from this stage, I've got gone back and I've renamed them all that I would have called soulmates. So the first guy I call a foundation mate. The second guy, who I did think was a soulmate, I still call him my soulmate. I can go back and tell you why. Then I had a whole mate, and then I had a thinking buddy, because it was a she, not a he. And now I'm in what I call a full mate relationship. So guess what?
What?
Here's the thing about that, is all of those relationships were about me becoming one with myself and not me becoming one with another.
Yes! Hold on! I gotta have some room to go, yes! That's what I've been trying to find. That's what I've been trying to explain it to all my girlfriends, and they looked at me with blanked over eyes and going, no. I don't want that. I want my own soulmate. Things will be so much better if I just have my own soulmate. And I'm just like,
I'm like, well, yeah, they are, because you need those relationships in order to become one with yourself. But where I got really, really messed up, although it's messed up in a good way, I'm going to say messed up in a good way, is thinking it was those relationships that I would actually have the relationship that I wanted. And in the end, I did, because I got the relationship with myself that I wanted, that I'm now actually, I think, more prepared. That's why I'm coming out of my adolescence. I actually think I'm more prepared to show up in a relationship that might be the relationship I really want to be in. Doesn't mean it's going to last forever either, by the way.
Right.
But I actually might be able to show up the way I want to show up in a relationship that would have another person be able to show up the way I would like them to show up.
Yes. I think we've just done the whole show in the last 3 minutes.
All right, good. There's all the wisdom. Good luck.
All the points in the show. And now we're going to have to spend the next 45 minutes to, rewind each of the poignant point that you said so that we can, really capture all the different powerful points that you just touched on.
All right.
And before we go, I just had to say hi to my friend Carrie Blasek there. She's joined us. And if you like to jump in on the conversation, feel free to say yes. If not, you can just say, you guys go on. I'm just here, watching the live show. You just want to say hi? Okay, sorry, your Google sounds really terrible, so I'm just going to, I'm going to mute you, and if you want to speak, just raise your hand so I can see you. Is that okay? All right. So first we just touched on this whole concept of what is the difference between adolescent relationship versus an adult relationship. And that in itself is a huge thing. And I also wanted to say that I don't want to insult anyone. Please don't hear us when we say adolescence relationship versus adult relationship as if you're bad and wrong for being in an adolescent relationship. We're just making a really important distinction that, me in my 40, almost 7 years of living in relationship just recently discovered that there's such a thing as a difference between me as an adolescent expecting, all these adolescents' dreams to be fulfilled by my partner.
Right. Right.
And to recognize that as, oh my gosh, that's just my teenager running the relationship. Looking back in my marriage, that is such a great description for that. I wanted to describe it in a way that's really loving but truthful, I was controlling. I was very insecure with myself, and I want him to make me feel secure. Right? I want him to be responsible for our financials so that I don't have to be responsible for it. Even though I was making money and I was doing both. I was equally making money and equally in control of our relationship and where we were growing. At the same time, I was secretly blaming him for not being more successful or more taking care of me. All this teenager expectation.
That's interesting. Because that, I think, is a common expectation that women have when they go into a relationship.
Totally.
Now, I had the opposite. We were both making lots of money, and he is the financial responsible one. He was very successful. He was very financially responsible. We didn't have that problem. What we had is, I think there was an emotional connection. There were a lot of lies that came to the surface, and it was, in the end, he wouldn't grow with me. In the end, that's where we fell apart. But it's just different expectations. Different expectations.
You mentioned some lies. What were some of the lies that surfaced?
Well, there were a bunch of them, and they were literal lies. So the first ones that happened is like just telling me what's really going on with you, and these happen to be like, well, are you dating anybody else? So what happened is that people, when we're dating, are you dating anybody else? No, we're engaged, and you're going down, and you're going to be in an environment where I wasn't going to be, and I knew there was going to be an old girlfriend there, and there was total lies. I mean, there was 3 hours on the phone that we talked about, and like, just tell me the truth. I was like, I can deal with the truth better than I can deal with the lies. I may not like the truth, but I can deal with the truth better than I can deal with the lies. 3 hours of a conversation about that. But after I got married, 2 months on the heels of after I got married, I realized that whole conversation came to the surface, that it was a lie. So I was trying to say, if you're going to be with this old girlfriend down there, let me know. And he denied that she was going to be there. He denied that they were going to see each other. And I came to find out that not only that, they stayed in the same house together the entire week that they were there.
Wow! So at the beginning of your marriage relationship, there were lies that you didn't know.
Tons of lies. Now that was his lie.
Right.
Now what I can do is I had my own lies.
Yeah.
My own lie that I didn't get surfaced until actually I'd done a lot of work on myself was that if I don't marry this guy, I'll never get married.
I had that same lie.
Did you?
I had the same lie. Pick me. That's me,
I got one. He'll marry me.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, I loved my husband, and I cherished him, and I thought he was so wonderful. But to be honest, when he asked me to marry him, it was a very lukewarm experience inside my heart, and that the first thought that really came was, is this all there is to it? Is that like that movie? Is this as good as it gets? And then the next thought was, well, it's better than nothing, and I could have a really good, stable family life with him, and and our kids would be just fine, and he will be respectful and all this stuff, and I could trust him. And so I said yes. And we didn't discover that lie until 13 years later, when I had the courage to ask him, so why did you ask me to marry you? And he had a lie too, and he said, I asked you to marry me because it was Valentine's Day, and I always suck at getting you presents, and I knew that would make you very happy. Wasn't that gorgeous? I was like, oh my God, 10 years into it, we finally told each other that.
Told each other, and it took 10 years before we were actually willing to face that, which is partly the good of being in these relationships.
Yeah.
Because we actually can't deal with those lies. If you had been able to surface that lie on that Valentine's Day, it would have been an interesting conversation. But you wouldn't have had the next 10 years the way you had it, no doubt. And it takes these 10 years in order to surface those lies, which is like why we're talking about coming out of lessons now.
Yeah.
It's the conversation isn't about don't be in relationships. The conversation is let's get an understanding of what it means and what is the work of relationship is what I would call it. The work of relationship. Yeah. Not the dream of the relationship so much, the work of the relationship.
Right. And you just like said it, and I want to highlight it. It's like the thing is to be really if people are listening to this show, what I want to leave you with is that don't take this as a should. Like, you should figure out all your lies. You should name it all up front, and you should deal with it. Therefore, you have the perfect, lasting relationship. No, it's just like go in it knowing that you probably have a tons of lies that you don't know about. And you have to live through it so that you can raise your consciousness and really see the lies. And then you get to live through those, resolving that. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I say, and I make a claim to say, I feel like I'm coming out of my adolescence.
Yeah. Basically,
what I'm saying is, I think I can deal with the lies now.
Yeah.
Up front.
That's right.
let's surface them and let's deal with them. That to me is being out of adolescence. Not that I'm going to find a relationship where there are no lies, or not that I'm not telling any more of them. I'm like, but I'm vigilant for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And dealing with them, we also don't mean it to be a harsh way either. It's more like have the courage to address them, to name it, and then the patience and the love and the trust to just be in the conversation and wait for the other person to react, and both sides to recover from that, from naming that.
And that is not easy to do.
No.
It is not easy to do.
Yeah. Because
I made a mess of a relationship because we couldn't do that with each other. Just a total mess of a relationship. Because that's what we were trying to do with each other. Couldn't do it with each other.
Well, I was gonna tell the part where we survived through that conversation, but it sounds like yours is even more fun. How did you make a mess? Like, do you remember some of the words that were said or the expectation that made it messy?
There were just like, what wasn't messy about it? I have to describe it as a power struggle, is what I'm going to tell you. And so there was this, one of the bigger problems that we had is one of us thinking we knew more than the other. And particularly when we get to these quote unquote sophisticated kinds of relationships where we're very self-aware and we recognize the truth and we're reflecting each other back there. Yeah. Well, then me to nail you on your truth, like it's you need to see your truth because I'm showing it and I'm telling you that, just triggers me, triggered me. And then off I am, and I can't deal with being triggered, and I deal with my trigger, and then he can't deal with me being triggered, and then we just right off. And I mean, it just spirals downward, right, to the point where, we would find some ways we could come back.
Yeah.
But in the end, we never really got those resolved in order to move forward from them. We'd just be on to the next trigger.
Sherry, you dropped so many great little things for me to open up, because what you just touch on is like what I laugh at I call this, with humor and with sarcasm, the spiritual relationship. I get really scared when I am with someone who's really spiritually evolved or thinks that they are spiritually evolved, because I think I'm spiritually evolved. He thinks he's spiritually evolved. And we actually use our spiritually evolved self to beat the heck out of each other. And we get really smart, and we have a lot of tools to really do damage and get righteous without us owning and recognizing it. In a way, I much rather have the unconscious relationship, We're much kinder to each other.
For a reason.
Yes.
For a reason.
Yeah, I mean, like, be careful. The more personal growth you do, the harder your relationship gets, because you got, oh God, I don't know how to like even celebrate that part of us where we can just get so righteous with our spiritually evolved self. What a paradox.
It's crazy making, absolutely crazy making.
Right.
And at the same time, I'm going to tell you that relationship was, it was the crucible of my own transformation. Yeah. So I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah.
Thank God I'm done with it. For the most part.
Yeah.
I at least know how to. I know how to deal with it right now.
Yeah.
But you have to. I mean, I have this. I have a stand around this because I do think that we are in really extraordinary times, and we're complex, and we want soulmates. One, because we want the relationship, but we also want soulmates because our souls are actually going to guide us through this process. So having that connection, I think, is really important as we face and get into these relationships, so that we're living in these extraordinary times where we're being called to really reach into a new potential for humanity. And the work we need to do in order to reach that potential is all going to show up in our relationships. So we really need to pay attention to what's happening. We need to want to go into these things and work them. And
well, actually, not work them. Work ourselves.
Let them work us. Yes.
Yes. Because I think that's what we need to do next now on this conversation is to redefine soulmate, because I think there's an unconscious definition of soulmate out there that that Hollywood spin off on and then we bought into because it looks so good. You know, like soulmate means you met a really handsome guy or a beautiful girl or beautiful woman, right? And then you met and you have this rush of good feelings and it feels so good and you feel so in love, and so that must be the right one, and everything is so easy and so smooth, and you know, and he has so much potential to make money, and he's so powerful, and he has a good job and all that stuff, so it makes us feel safe, right? So that's part of the soulmate. And then what else? Oh, and we're interested in the same interests, and so it's fun to go do things together. And gosh, no one had ever said that to me before. No one had ever made me feel so good like that before. Right? Oh, and then sex. Sex is so good and hot with that person, and I've never had sex like that with anyone else. So that must be my soulmate.
Soulmate,
right?
Right.
What else? What else is in here?
So like that's a great question. How do you determine what's a soulmate and what's not and who's not a soulmate?
Yeah, or maybe that's it's like that's like the definition that has been sold. I'm thinking through the lens of Hollywood movies, you know, like we see all these, you know, George Clooney, well, he's a little old, he's more our type of soulmate, right? But like Jake Gyllenhaal, whatever his name is, or whatever, all the new cute young guys that's coming up and blah blah blah. Boy, life would be so good if you have to. I mean, look at Brad Pitt and Angela Jolie, right? They're soulmate, and look at what their soulmate journey looked like, up and down, up and down, you know.
Absolutely, challenge each other and are fighting all the time, and you know they're in it,
I think soulmate is like
that.
That
probably is. That could be a soulmate conversation. Well, here's like I don't know how. I think everybody has to ask these questions themselves. So before we actually go out and say I want to find my soulmate, we actually might want to define what a soulmate is. And I don't think there's going to be one definition for it. So it's going to be flavored. I want to point to three different things. Like if I can help people kind of try to sort this out a little bit. Point to a couple things that might make a difference. So one, when we're talking about souls, we're actually talking about a world we don't know a whole lot about. You know, if I'm going to say soul, I'm going to say it's that larger part of myself. I'm going to say it's the part of myself that includes my body and my mind, my emotions, my heart, but it's bigger than that.
And deeper than that. It's like
deeper
deep.
than that.
Yeah.
And it's in this space, and it doesn't have form. We can't measure it. We can't actually point to it or see it. So we try to talk about the feeling sense of it, which I think gets closer to it, but that's just scratching the surface of this world of the soul that we consciously don't really know that much about. Okay, so we're in the dark, I think, when it comes to having soul, when we talk about soul mates anyway. So that's part of how
it's like that first assumption. Don't assume you know what a soulmate look like or feel like, because just because your teenager think that that's a soulmate, you know, Prince Charming on a white horse, that's not necessarily a soulmate. Or it could be, actually, you know.
It could be, and so I point there. Second of all, I would say that part of what happened for me, and in these questions that you originally asked, is like, what happens when I finally get the man to commit? You know, what happens next is that it's like there's a doorway into a whole another game. So for me, and this is why, you know, spiral dynamics for me has been helpful, is that, you know, I sort of grew up with this idea that the game of life was played out like the game of life, Milton Bradley. You know, there's a board game, and you go to college, or you don't, or you get a job, and you make so much money, and then you get married, and you get the car, and then you get the kids, and you travel around, and you know, do these little life things before you retire, and you die. I'm like, well, that was not the game of life. I did all of that, and that was not the game of life that I've seen. And what I think happens, particularly when we find the one that can commit, or we actually find our soulmate, then we're actually introduced to more of what the game of life is today. And that looks like more of these digital video games that we're playing, where you have one level that you have to master one level in the skills before you get to level up and go to the next level. And then you have to get different skills and you can play differently, except that it's not even the same game because every time you level up, the whole field changes, the people change, the skills you need, the way that it works, the way it interacts, all changes. So it's like going from playing Donkey Kong to playing Grand Theft Auto to the next level, which might be playing Halo, to the next layer, which may be playing SimCity. Then you go up to another layer that's like Farmville. They're totally different games, totally different worldviews, different intelligences, different things that are being asked of us to master these levels.
Yeah.
And so what a soulmate might actually be helping you to do is figure out how to master those levels. So when I looked at Steve Harvey's book, to me he was actually giving the guide. He was providing a map for a part of one of those levels that was like, wow, how do I find a relationship that will help me master some of the things that I need to see about myself, about how the world works, about how to deal with people at one of those levels. And that's just the beginning.
That's right. It's just the beginning.
And that relationship might not be able to take you to the next level.
Well, let me just highlight that for a second, because you just gave me a new angle to see what Steve gave us. So at that level, if you watch the movie, you do see. I did see, like, the women were like doormats to start at the start of the movie. At the end of the movie, what they learned to stand in their own power. That first level of play. There's a sense of ownership to them, and there's a sense of worth it that I am worth you fighting for. I am worth you bidding for me. I am worth you changing your life for, that kind of thing. So that absolutely is one level of the game, as you call it. I really like how you see that, And then, so the problem is our society sold us just that one level of play and call it a marriage and put a time expiration on it, which means forever, until you die. That, I think, we need to bust up.
Bust that up. Well,
yeah.
Not to say that there won't be people out there that don't have that'll find that, but I'm going to say that's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, exactly. If you can do that with that same soulmate or mate for life, if you both continue to help each other move to the next level and then to the next level of the game, right? But what happened is that what we do is we get into that kind of relationship and we unconsciously made a pact with each other to keep that level of game going.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the oath that we do. There it is. So we take the oath to say, what is the marriage oath again? I can't even repeat it. It's like for better or for worse and blah, 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 in sickness and in health and all of that. What we're really saying is that, okay, you make me feel good, I make you feel good. You keep me secure, I promise to keep you secure. I promise not to rock the boat with you if you promise not to rock the boat with me. I promise not to cheat and lie to you and insult you that way, and you better promise not to do the same to me. And we're going to raise this.
If I'm not happy, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And we're going to raise these kids together, and we're going to live happily ever after, and we promise to put the kids into college and blah, 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 and celebrate Mother's Day and Father's Day the way it's been done. That's what we actually are taking an oath on.
Yes.
The oath actually should.
I think that's what a lot of us think we're taking an oath on. Yeah.
Well, it's unconscious, but that's what. Right. And so then we get really upset when our husband or our wife, look at someone else or worse, have affairs and all that stuff. We feel like this humongous betrayal because there's not enough room for a bigger, deeper conversation with each other.
Right, and that to me was not a function of the institution. It wasn't even a function of the relationship. It was a function of my capacity to show up in the relationship. So I can't even sit here and say it was his problem. Although I did try to do a lot of that.
That's right.
I did try to do your part. If you would just change, then this relationship will be fine.
Yeah.
What happened for me is I actually had the wisdom after I got out of my first relationship, my marriage. I actually knew that if I didn't work on myself, that I would just attract the same guy in a different package, different name, different, look a little different, but it would be the same relationship. So after I got out of my first relationship, my first marriage, that actually I said I found my soulmate inside of, then I spent 11 years just working on myself.
Yeah.
just working on myself before I got into the next really significant relationship. And that's the one I made the biggest mess out of, by the way. But
congratulations.
Yeah. But I came out of that one.
Yeah.
I came out of it more of who I really am. I came out of it knowing that it was a huge gift, even though it wasn't and I actually thought he was the one. Believe it. I even had all these stories in my head that I knew there wasn't the one. I actually thought he was the one. And when that just didn't happen, I mean, that threw my world into a little bit of, another crisis. Like, well, how can I walk away from this when you're supposed to be the one? And but I managed to resolve it, But well, he's not the one. He's still not the one.
You just made me laugh because we called our show Sex and the Soulmate and Detour Ahead. When we're driving and we get hit with a detour, we get disoriented. We get panicking. We're like, this is not right. This is not my path. And where they're leading us is usually dark with a few blinking lights. There's not clearly marked sign, and usually some signs are missing, right? And so we're like, this is wrong. This is not. I'm not on the right path. I'm not on the right journey. Put me back in that orderly, straight road. That means that I'm doing it right, and that means that I'm a good person.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. And here I'm going to point and say, here would be the thing that held me together during all this, and that was my girlfriend. So she was. I also call her another soulmate. I'm pretty sure she. We have a relationship that goes back way beyond who we've been in this lifetime. But she stabilized it. So as I was going through this soulmate relationship with the one, if I didn't have that relationship with my girlfriend, no way would I've gotten through it.
Yeah.
No way. And it was in that I started to actually, in that relationship with a woman that had this, in this particular one, there was no sexual energy. In fact, we thought it was pretty funny because it was just zero sexual energy.
Right.
I think you could probably do this with a relationship that had sexual energy, but you got to be careful because the sexual energy really confuses things.
Well, that's because it confuses things because we're adolescents without sex.
We're still adolescents with our sex.
That's right. And so we
responding to impulses of it.
That's right. We're not mature around our sex either.
We're not mature. So I would say my relationship with my friend, the woman who was also a soulmate, I actually started learning good relationship skills with her, and how to really be in a relationship where there wasn't sexual energy and there wasn't a polarity of male, female so much. We were more alike, and that's a lot of the stuff that was showing up in the relationships I was in that I was not doing well and needed to practice that. I could practice with her.
Yeah.
I could practice with her. And so when we're talking about the soul mates, there is a soul journey, I would say, and the big thing to keep in mind here is that the agenda that our soul has for us when they offer us a mate is probably not the same as the agenda our mind or our personality or our small self or ego, however you want to use language, has for us. Not the same. So when I translate, here I have this little smaller self dream of
the beautiful house,
where what I want my life to be, and I think my soul, the beautiful house, the kids, the
handsome
security,
husband,
all that stuff. And I find a soulmate. The soul, if it's actually a soulmate, the agenda my soul has for me in that is not going to be the same one that my small self has for me. That's why we call it a detour. It's taken us. And I think it's actually going to take us up these levels. That's why I think that's important, is that our soul actually knows how to navigate these levels. And so when we're actually dealing with soul relationships, we're going to get through these levels a lot better. But the guidebooks aren't written for this yet.
No, and you know what? The truth is, I don't know if it's because the guidebook's not written to it, but I look around and I see and hear my 20-something girlfriends. They don't want to hear our soul journey. They don't want that. They want the fairy tales. They want that adolescence dream. They want that perfect husband. Even the one who is really evolved and really have had many deep conversations that I've seen, they see it and they go, I know it's not good enough there, blah, blah, blah. But then they want to repeat exactly what their mother did, which is that beautiful dress, that big wedding, and that man who promised to love them forever and to keep it the way it is and keep the monogamous thing going and blah blah blah. Like, don't you break that dream of mine. I want that dream, and I'm gonna make it work for heaven's sake, And I'm just like, okay, so you have to have that. Let's help you find that, And I think
absolutely.
Yeah.
If somebody would have told me this before I started, I would have I could have cared less.
That's right.
Cared less.
Yeah.
So we're not actually. I don't think we're actually talking to those people, And if you're rejecting this whole thing, I'm saying great, and it actually serves, I think, humanity because you're going to go through it. The only way through it is through it. The only way you're going to start to even get a sense of what we're talking about is after you've gone through it,
Yeah.
Or you've had enough of the experience out there to say, all right, great, now what?
Yeah, and maybe the hope there is that they go through it and they get out of it sooner. Because I think in our generation, we stayed in too long. We stayed in for decades, right?
Absolutely. And what they can be sure about is that there are people like you and I out here that, can show up when you're in a sorry state.
That's right. We got our pom-poms going. We go, oh, honey, welcome to the other side. Thank God that journey was a short one for you,
Yes, right. And that's where we've been trailblazers because there haven't been. I mean, I've had to put all of the stuff that I've put together, on my own. And so the why I find these conversations valuable is at least people know, wow, it's a little safer. They can feel a little safer on their journey because there are depots that we're constructing around all this that actually understand, like, oh, the dream didn't work. Oh, imagine that.
It's not your fault that the dream didn't work. It's supposed to look like this. Actually, this is how you bought that toy way back when, 10 years ago, and it's supposed to self-destruct right now, and you're supposed to meet this guy and have the affair and make it all messy and blow it up like that. You're not a sinner. You're not a terrible person for that to happen. You didn't do anything wrong, and you shouldn't carry all this guilt with your children and all that stuff. Like, we're here to absolve all of your sinning and your guilt about it and just love you and say, you've had the perfect ride. If you're blowing up your life and that you have 2 kids going, why can't we stay together in the same house? You're such a terrible mother. You chose your sex over me, or whatever that they do to you or that you do to yourself. We're like, no. Erase all that, honey. You're about to move to the next level of your game.
Next level of the game.
That's right. It's just bling, and and just to love that process and love your quote-unquote failure or your pain or your messes so that you can just discover more of yourself.
Discover yourself. Absolutely. Yep. That's why you and I are here. That's why I've gone through what I've gone through.
That's right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
believe me, it's not so much for what I think is on the other side of it for me right now, although I think there's some really cool stuff that has made all of it worth it, no doubt. But there is this, wow, how can we really turn back now and give some people, it's not the words of a wisdom that would say avoid all of this and actually navigate this territory without doing what I did is exactly what we're talking about now. Is go do it. Get in the mess. Know you're going to make a mess, and guess what? We're going to be standing there with towels on the back end.
That's right.
Yep. Dry yourself off. Blow it up. Fluff your feathers, and now we're going to learn how to fly a different place.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Well, it made me think about, because I do have a young daughter. She's 11. She's getting ready to turn 11. And knowing what I know, I'm not selling her the whole marriage and white wedding thing anymore. So but she still gets it from school and all her friends, And so I am actually wondering, what do I teach her? How do I share with her my perspective that is so different than what she's surrounded by all her friends with, And it's like, how do, I do, I'm one of those moms that took my daughter to go see Sex and the City when she was 8 or 9, because that's the time when she's willing to talk to me about sex, At 10 years old, she shut that off. She's like, no, Mom, I don't want to talk to you about that anymore. That's completely inappropriate. But at 8, she wants to talk to me about that. So anyway, I'm still questioning.
She wants to talk about that, yeah.
In her ways, of course, but I'm still wondering, God, as a mother, how do I talk about relationship and marriages? Because I don't believe in a marriage that has to last a lifetime anymore. And I don't want her to sound like a floozy when she goes to school telling her friends that, you know, you go, oh, no, you don't marry for life. You just marry until you're done, and then you move on, you know, like other parents, when they hear that, they think that, you know, there's something wrong with my daughter.
I don't have good answers for that
No.
at all. I do not have good answers for that at all.
How do you guide your children?
Well, I think I have one. I have a son who's 20, coming up on 21. And my sense is there's a generational thing here too that I'm sort of sensitive to. So a lot of the experiences that you and I have had are generational.
Yeah.
And that the next generation behind us is oriented to this question very differently. And I don't know what their experience is going to be. I think they're going to have some. And their role model right now is like Kate and Will, you know. So they actually have a role model out there a little bit that shows them, like, wow, there's a relationship.
You mean Kate and Will of whatever that show is? What's that show again?
No,
God.
English Aristocracy.
Oh God, that Kate and Will. I thought you meant the comedy show last decade. What was that? Where she's the single woman and her best friend was Will and he's gay and.
Oh no! I'm talking about the Duke and Duchess of
Cambridge,
where? Cambridge, I think is there, right? Kate and Will, right?
Yeah, and
that's a generational kind of relationship that we're looking at, where the Gen X relationship was Diana and Charles. Okay, and what a freaking mess that was.
That was scary. So what is Kate and Will doing? I'm missing out on this one. So you got to enlighten me.
I mean, they've got, you know, the quote unquote perfect relationship, you know, and they have this kind of, it looks like from the outside anyway. I don't know, you know, like they may start out on the right foot.
Really?
We'll see. All I'm pointing to is that, well, yeah, it looks that way.
Wait, hold on. What's the right foot for this generation? I am so fascinated.
That's a good question. Well, first of all, they have society around them in a way that is different, and a cheering on of how to support their relationship. So where Charles and Diana are more stereotypical of the Gen X generation in that era, where you're going to see that the public was, you know, tearing them apart. What you're going to see is the public is more in their court. The public wants them to succeed. The public is going to leave them alone, and they're going to celebrate them as a happy couple. For the most part, it's not universal, but as compared to like what we saw with Diana and Charles, you know, where
that's so fascinating.
So that's one thing. So they're going to have society behind them in a different way than was in other generations. And we just started talking about that, right? So we just started talking about that you and I are going to be on the other side of this when it falls apart to be able to pick them up and go ahead. Well, there wasn't society on the other side of this when I felt, you know, when my stuff started falling apart. I had to pick myself up. I think you had to pick yourself up. And we're blazing new territory here, trying to find out what are the answers. That's why I don't have answers for that. And you know, this generation coming behind them, they're going to have us around them to help them through their relationship challenges in a different way. You know?
Well,
so there are some dynamics.
I can see that. And I guess where I was hiccuping was I'm like, wait a minute. To me, Kate and Will still feels very much like what we do, we project the perfect relationship onto them. You know, here's a prince and here's a beautiful princess. She's not fat and ugly. She's not, you know, she's still that perfect body. And he's still that perfect image of a prince. And so the two together, that's, you know, I still think we do a lot of stuff to these people, and we're hoping that they will make it. They will make this old model work, which I don't think Kate and Will negotiating. And honey, when I'm ready to move to the next level of play, that you'll be there with me holding my hand, you know, and then when I'm ready to open my sex up to other people, that you'll support that, you know, and the queen would be happy with that. I don't see that quite yet.
We're gonna have to wait and see how that happens.
That's right. I'm still thinking that they're expecting that each other's going to fulfill every single wishes that they have from each other, and that he's the one and she's the one. And we're going to have to watch the one thing play out with the big royals so that we can go, well, gee, gosh, maybe that just doesn't work, this model. How many times have we tried this model again? It's still not working.
Still not working.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm not saying that they're going to make it based on what I'm seeing. I just said it's just different already. So I think those are both true. I think everybody's got to watch out for that.
I think we should take a bet. Maybe we should do like one of those football pool kind of thing. We could do a marriage pool on Kate and Will, and then that we just go, okay, who's gonna, we can pool money. I know that might be illegal, but anyway, I just think it's funny. It's like Kate and Will, when will that marriage disintegrate, and when will this model of relationship, or are they going to kill each other doing this, or when are they going to start cheating and lying to each other? Oh, it's so painful. It just makes my heart just want to just like die. Anyway.
I don't know. I guess that we've gotten down this because I don't have good answers. I don't know.
Nobody does.
I don't know what to tell my son. All I can do is say I know that I'm going to be there for him in a different way than what has been there in the past, because you and I are having this conversation, because I understand the dynamics of what I understand, because I've been through what I've been through.
Yeah.
My sense is I'll be able to help guide them a little bit better. That doesn't mean that they're going to avoid the pitfalls. That doesn't mean he's going to find the relationship that will last him a lifetime. He might, because there's generational differences where those relationships have more of a chance of making it through these levels together.
Yeah.
I have no idea. We gotta wait and see. All I can tell you is that what I do think is true is that fairy tale, if you're going into and people think that the fairy tale, I can have it by just having the perfect marriage ceremony where I get my dreams fulfilled in my marriage ceremony, and I love those shows, by the way, to watch, like
the psychotic behavior and thinking.
I love those big wedding shows. I do.
And we cry every time. I don't know why, but I do.
I can tell you, I know why I watch them, but I don't watch them because it's like, they have the perfect wedding, therefore they get the perfect marriage.
Yeah.
Like, no. That the perfect marriage is not the fairy tale right now. That's what I'm going to say.
Well,
if I have to say it, the perfect marriage to me would be somebody who can actually travel those levels with you.
Well, I was just going to say.
And that doesn't mean in a marriage ceremony. So when I look back in my own life, and the reason I call my first husband a foundational mate and a soulmate, because without that relationship, I couldn't have done the work that I've done.
Yeah.
I left that relationship with this idea that I'm going to leave it to improve it. So when I get out of this relationship and it's time to end, I end it so that relationship can actually expand into more of what it actually can be, which wasn't the dream. It wasn't the contemporary, conventional relationship. But our relationship works. My first husband, it works. We raised a child together, continue to raise a child together, but it doesn't look like either one of us thought it was going to look like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I love that name, the foundational relationship, because it was a foundational relationship for me too. We were so good together, and I learned so much. I learned what to do and what not to do from that. I learned that if I do this, this is the consequence. This is what will happen to that. So I now have choices. Before I was unconscious.
Oh, me too, big time.
Yeah, and so
unconscious and numb.
Right. It makes
delusional.
All this stuff.
Delusional.
All of this stuff makes me want to become like wedding minister. Like I think I will make a really cool one to okay guys, I know you're going in for the whole lifetime thing. I'm just going to give you 10 years. After 10 years, you're going to have to come back and renew this vow and check in to see where you guys are and what is, where you're going and what is hungering inside you to come out so that we can negotiate the next 10 years. And maybe this is the right partner for you 10 years from now. Maybe he's not or she's not, and then we can consciously move forward together, or we can consciously say goodbye, thank each other properly before we do damage. It's like we don't know how to say goodbye, we don't know how to end, so we do damage and then we hurt each other so that we can say, fuck you, I'm out of here. It's all your fault.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. You said it right there.
Oh my goodness.
So it's flexible. It's flexible arrangements, really, is what we need.
Yeah.
And the more flexible the arrangements, there's a prime. There is a prime zone between structure and stability and flexibility, and it's more flexible. So I've actually started using this prime. I really want to stay in the prime one of my own life, and then for a relationship that I do going forward will be in this prime. How much flexibility do we need to build into the relationship? And the more flexibility without losing the stability that we need, chances are we're going to get there a long term.
Yeah.
But if there's too much flexibility, you don't really have a relationship. And if there's too much structure, which is, believe me, the fairy tale is a pretty tight structure. It's a very
small
place for people to live in. Doesn't, it crumbles. It crumbles fast.
Yeah, and when yours crumble, we want you to hear this, like, yay, we're over here going, congratulations, you finally got to the right doorway to get out and move to the next level. And if you need any help, give us a call or listen to this show again, or more shows in the future, because it seems to be that this is what I'm doing in the world right now, is to talk about the unconventional, the detour parts that we haven't. No, our mother didn't talk about. When your life goes into detours, this is the manual for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the soulmate part of this, to go back now, to pick up where we were and the few things, is that I think my definition of a soulmate is one who reflects me back to me better than another person does. So that's why I call the second person that I met my soulmate, because that was the first time that I realized and that actually got interested in my soul, is because he showed me who I really was, reflected me back. And I call him a soulmate because I fell in love with that. And I'm like, but I fell in love with my reflection through him. Like, wow, why wouldn't I fall in love with that part of myself? I want to fall in love with that part of myself. And then we tend to project it onto another person. So I think it's the person that I'm in love with when they're actually just reflecting me back to me. And so my definition is that. And that when we get into these relationships, and particularly soul relationships, what you're getting is yourself reflected back to you. And so the first part, and I think Steve Harvey's book, really, this is part of this stream that runs through all these levels. He did get right, is that we have to know ourselves and we have to know the other. So if we learn who we are in relationship to another, and we learn that by understanding how the other thinks. We start to see ourselves, we see others, and we can't really see another until we see ourselves. So that's what happened in that book, right? As he showed man, and as he showed this is how a man thinks, and the women actually got to see themselves as women, and then adapt to how the man thinks, based on who they see themselves. Those are more soulmate relationships, because I'm learning more and more about myself. I'm becoming more and more who I am in the world. Then we can get through these levels, and each of these levels actually starts to show us more and more and more of who we are. Which is why I say the second relationship I was in was even harder than the first, because I was actually really ready. I was ready to see more of myself, of who I was, and oh dear, that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I got to see myself. And
it's interesting because yes, soulmates, when they help you see yourself, can be hard like that. And you can also negotiate for a softer journey. Like I know for myself, I'm in a second journey right now, and to be honest, I negotiated with him and I say, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm wanting to discover about myself. This is what I want to heal in myself, and this is what I want to grow into. If you're up for it and go with me and we'll learn together, great. If not, you can opt out anytime. No feelings hurt, or if we hurt our feelings, we can sit there and help each other heal and until we're ready to move forward. But you don't have to feel obligated. And it's actually a very gentle journey that we're going through. And, definitely got all of our little twisted and all that stuff, and me wanting something and he wanting something else, and we're negotiating our way. But because we have that agreement, it just feels like it's so much easier for us. So you can do it either way. Whichever way you do it, there's no wrong way. It's just that.
No, and what I heard you say is because you knew yourself,
you
knew what you were looking for, you knew what you were wanting, you could actually not be in a lie about why you were in the relationship. You could bring that stuff to the front at the beginning.
Yeah.
Then you can negotiate your way through it a little better.
Right.
That's the value of busting out the lies. so that we can just get honest and authentic and truthful about what's happening for us.
Absolutely. Well, honey, that hour just flew right by. Oh my God. Why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do and how they can get a hold of you?
Well, I'm all over the web, so you can just Google me, and probably the first 4 pages that you're going to see, most of that's me. So Sherry Beck, sherry-beck.com, Spiralize is my Twitter handle. I'm on Facebook at Sherry Beck. I'm LinkedIn, Sherry Beck. Any one of those.
So it's Sherry, Cherie, by the way. Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You've been fabulous. This is just I knew this conversation would just go like wild horses running, oh my God, here we go. There's so much to play with in here.
Yeah. Start lots of fires out there.
That's right. Anyway, well, we wish all of you so much success in whatever journey or whatever level of life that you're playing at, your game of life. And Mei Vu, I work with individuals and couples who are in crisis with their sex lives and connection. When one person wants more and the other one said, no way in hell am I going to go that way, I might be able to help you guys. Been there, done that. You can find me and connect with me on Facebook, on my Facebook fan page called Sex, Lives, and Consciousness. And I have a new website now that is being built, but there are some content on there, so please come and make some comments, generate some community with us. It's a safe place for us to start talking about our sex, our lives, and raising our consciousness. My shows are on every Monday at 12 noon Pacific time. Next week's show, I have the fabulous Ann Betts, who's going to talk about sex and the brain, how the brain really impact our sex. We thought it's all about the one and making that magical connection, but actually our brain has a lot to do with this whole sex thing. Yeah. So I can't wait to hear what Ann has to say. She's been doing lots of research on that. Thank you so much for listening to my show, Sex, Lives, and Consciousness, the voice of healthy sex. My ultimate goal is to help us get a hold of our sex, own it, play with it, have lots of power over it so that it can serve us to bring us joy and freedom. Talk to you next time. Bye, Sherry. Thank you.
Thanks, Mei Vu. Have a blast.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Sex, Lies, and Consciousness. You can find May on Facebook by liking her page, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness, or hang out with her on Google+. To find her, type in the URL gplus.to/Meivu. gplus.to/MAIVU.